What's going on, man? Welcome back to the basement. I'm Ron, and today we have what is my favorite video to record, research, outline, everything. It's Monday, which means we are going to be talking through my top 10 lessons learned for week 5 of the fantasy football season. Looking forward to week 6. I pretty much go through all of the games, all of the data, and I bring to you guys my top 10 takeaways, lessons learned, observations from the game, and apply them or the games and apply them to fantasy football. So as always, if you enjoy this video, make sure down below, subscribe, leave a like. Let's go.
Stones, like this froze, ice cold, ice around my body like I'm frozen. She gon' let me.
Now, first up, of all the terrible things that have happened to the Jets so far, we finally got some positives. Now, I will say, the Jets' best offensive lineman tore his Achilles yesterday. So we are just in a world of hurt, but we won. And the first takeaway here is Breece Lightning, unleash the Breece, feed the Breece, whatever you want to call it, man. Breece Hall was an absolute stud yesterday. He had 22 carries, 177 rushing yards, a touchdown, 75 rushing yards over expected. He had that huge long run you can see there, which is great to see. I think he had like a 70-plus yard run, which post ACL, that's exactly what you want to see. And I was talking about it with a buddy of mine who's also a Jets fan. Like, I think it's because I'm just like a wuss, but it would be a real mind fuck for me of being Breece Hall, tearing your ACL in Denver, and then pretty much almost a year later to the dot, going there again to play football. I don't know. It would trip me out. I wouldn't really be confident, and he came out there, looked amazing, broke the doors off of the Broncos defense. Of course, the Broncos defense hasn't been great, but just to see him go out there, he clocked in, outside of the Miami Dolphins, he clocked in the second fastest time, where it's the Miami Dolphins, it's Jamar Chase, and then it's Breece Hall on that 72-yard rushing touchdown from yesterday. He hit 21.5 miles per hour, man. That is really, really good to see post ACL. Now, I do actually want to double check. I'm curious if he hit something faster in 2022, because I know that he was definitely on the leaderboard for fastest ball carriers last year. So if I go to 2022, he hit 21.87 in week 7 versus the Broncos as well. So 21.5 last year, 21.87 was his highest ball carrier speed. So it kind of checks out that Breece Hall is, about 90% plus back. The snap count sort of report that came out that was Breece Hall's not going to be on a snap count anymore, that was true as well, where he came out here. He had his highest snap share of the season, getting to 52%. We had Dalvin Cook all the way down to 16%. I think the next sort of step here is for Breece Hall to eat into those long down and distance snaps that Michael Carter is taking, and those 2-minute drill snaps that Michael Carter is taking, so that we can shrink this down from a 3-headed backfield to a 2-headed backfield. We'll see. It kind of just comes down to how much they trust Breece Hall in the pass game, which I don't know why they wouldn't. His targets per out run is 21%, so he's somebody they want to get going in the passing game. Now, I know that there are some concerns with Breece Hall, right? How do we feel about him moving forward? To me, he's an RB1 rest of season. If they're going to feed him in this capacity, I wouldn't expect 20-plus touches every single week, but if we can just get to, we had some games early on this year where we were talking 2 carries or, 4 touches. If you can just get consistently to the 15 area in every game, he's been so efficient that that's going to be enough for him. Now, I know that people are going to ask, well, this offense is horrible, Zach Wilson is bad. The reason why Garrett Wilson takes a massive hit with Zach Wilson and why it's a lesser hit with Breece Hall is that without Aaron Rodgers, this has been the run-heaviest team in the NFL, where this is neutral pass rate across the league. You have the Chiefs, Bengals, Dolphins at the top, so that pretty much checks out. And then you have the Jets all the way at the bottom running the ball a ton. So when you're not passing the ball, you're running the ball a lot. Like we see here, it opens up a lot of opportunity for your ball carriers, where a guy like Breece Hall ends up with 20-plus touches yesterday, despite only playing 52% of the snaps. So there's a lot of volume to go around. And on top of that, Zach Wilson's been a little bit better. He didn't play as well as he did versus the Chiefs here, but he had one pick towards the end, but it wasn't one of these normal boneheaded picks where he just throws it to a guy who's clearly covered. I don't mind him throwing 50-50 balls to Garrett Wilson and getting picked off there. It was Pat Surtain. Surtain made a hell of a play, catching a pick between his legs. But if that was just a little bit more towards the back shoulder, it would have been fine. It wasn't like this boneheaded play. It didn't cost the game. So I'm not sure. He also had this great play on like that final drive as well, where 3rd and 4, he stares down Garrett Wilson. Garrett Wilson's clearly the first read. They double him. It's not there. He goes through his progressions. He finds Tyler Conklin up the seam and gets like a big chunk play out of it. So to me, this is all to say that he's not even in the top 25 quarterbacks in the NFL, but he's at least not stone worst unanimously at this point. He's bottom 10, which is actually like a massive improvement. So we'll see if he can build on that. This offense, though, has been enough of an environment that Breece Hall can still get his. Now, our second takeaway is Jonathan Taylor cucked by Zack Moss, and will this continue? So Jonathan Taylor comes out here. He gets the 3-year huge contract extension, and the question really just becomes, does this stick? Now, where did I put... Yeah, there we go. There's the Zack Moss, Jonathan Taylor game logs here, which, by the way, this is the utilization report. Shout out Fantasy Life. It's honestly absolutely insane that they can get all of this data the day after the games are done. But you can see here, Jonathan Taylor was really not that much in the mix. Jonathan Taylor just 16% of the snaps, 18% of the rush attempts, 14% of the routes. It wasn't really all that great. Like, I think he ends up with just like 4 or 5 touches. It really wasn't. I mean, a lot of us started him. I started him myself. Yeah, he had 6 carries and 1 catch, so 7 touches here. But it makes sense. They were very adamant that he would be on a touch count. It makes sense as well that, he's not up to game speed. It takes a couple games for these guys to get their feet under them. So I wouldn't be panicking with Taylor. Moss has done enough to kind of solidify himself as the 1B in this backfield, but that's also not a massive deal. We see backfields all the time getting split between 2 players. I think Jonathan Taylor is efficient enough to be all right there. I think that we have a bye week coming up. No, week 11, so it's actually not really coming up. But you have 2 more pretty tough defenses to go up against, Jacksonville, Cleveland, and then like the Saints. But I think once you get to Carolina, the Patriots, a bye week, I think that's when he's going to start turning up. So until we kind of see that role expand, I'm treating Jonathan Taylor as like a fringe RB2 moving forward. We'll see. I'd imagine if he got 7 touches here, I'd imagine that he starts to get into that 10-plus category as they work him back in. So I would just say temper your expectations in the short term with Jonathan Taylor. But at least he's back. He's getting paid. I'd imagine, 2-3 more games in, we'll start to see Jonathan Taylor be a fantasy stud. Now, our third takeaway is the Falcons played 21st century ball this week, man. They did. They had 37 pass attempts going around. You had Drake London get 9 targets, Kyle Pitts get 10 targets. Now, Bijan suffered with just 2 targets here, which isn't great for him, but it was all around pretty good. The only concerning part was just Kyle Pitts having a 25 routes run on 39 dropbacks. That's going to be a lot lower than where he's usually at. He's usually like a 90% route participation guy, but the targets were there. So I'm not all that upset with 25 routes if he's going to get 10 targets on those routes. Kyle Pitts got home. He had a great game as well, where I want to say he had 11 targets. So PFF has him at 10, but Sleeper has him at 11 targets. But he had 7 catches, 87 yards, 15.7 fantasy points. He did great without scoring a touchdown. You also had Drake London, who did, I would call it fine. I don't think that he really went crazy or anything, but 6 catches for 78 yards will do. Everyone got home besides Bijan is kind of what it felt like. But Bijan also got a touchdown, 11.8 points. But Desmond Ridder was pretty good. And I think that he might have had like the most passing yards of his career. He had over 300 passing yards in this game. And on top of that, the reason that this Falcons offense is so good and so fantasy friendly, no. Let me just take a step back. They're not so good, but the reason why they're a little bit more fantasy friendly this year is because the environment is better. I do want to make it clear. I misspoke there. The Falcons offense hasn't been great, but it's been better than it was last year in my eyes because the environment's much better. Again, they're actually playing sort of 21st century ball, where last year they were run heavy and slow. So they were 31st in pass attempts per game. They were 26th in plays per game. This year, 26th in pass attempts per game, but going from 24.4 to 31.4 is huge. That's a 7 pass attempt per game increase. That's absolutely massive, where 24.4 was like historically low. So just being in this bottom 10 area and not being, league bottom, that's good. Plays per game, 14th in the NFL right now at 64.4. So they're running more with tempo, they're sustaining more drives, they're throwing the ball more, and that's all beautiful. So we have an offensive environment here where Drake London's going to be a fine high-end wide receiver 3 flex guy going forward. Kyle Pitts is a boom-bust tight end that you can start in a pretty bad landscape. Bijan's going to get his. Like, it's a fantasy offense that's not awful, is what I'm trying to say. Now, our fourth takeaway is Joe Burrow back? Joe Burrow comes out here this week, and they just absolutely ride him as well. They just, like, absolutely lean on him in the entire game. 46 pass attempts, 36 completions, 317 passing yards, 3 touchdowns. He had 4 rushing attempts as well for 7 yards. It seemed like he was a little bit more mobile in this game. He looked like himself in this game. I also wrote this down on Twitter, where Joe Burrow in weeks 1 through 4, his EPA per play was 30th in the NFL. His EPA per play in week 5 was 12th. Now EPA per play is expected points added, just on a per play basis. How much are you adding to the expectation of how many points you're going to score on a given drive or a given play? Like, for example, they'll have 3rd and 2 in field goal range. If you somehow screw that up and get sacked and now you're out of field goal range, that's a massive negative EPA play because you were expected to score at least a field goal there. So just on a per play basis, what are you doing in terms of helping your team out or hurting your team across the board? So he's 12th in that. Completion percentage over expectation, CPOE, is just your completion percentage based on your ADOT. What are you expected to complete on your passes? Are you over or under that? 34th in completion percentage over expected, weeks 1 through 4. Week 5, he was 8th. You have his PFF pass grade, 23rd, weeks 1 through 4. 9th this week. Completion percentage, 78.3%. Second in the NFL this week. Weeks 1 through 4 was at just a 57.6%. 32nd in the NFL. Yards per attempt was 35th. This week it was 18th. He had just 2 passing touchdowns through the first 4 weeks. This week he had 3 passing touchdowns. So Joe Burrow seems to be a little bit back here. You can see this little message on the bottom. He then gets the Seahawks next week in Cincinnati at home. And the Seahawks are allowing the 3rd most passing yards in the NFL per game at 280, and they have just the 19th EPA per drop back allowed defense. So it's not all that crazy of a passing defense. I will say Devin Witherspoon did look scary, but I think that the Bengals won't get too tripped up by that unit. And then we have Burrow at home versus I would call it at best a neutral matchup opponent versus Seahawks. Gets a bye to get healthy. T. Higgins is going to get healthy. And then coming out of that Week 7 bye into Week 8, I would feel really, really good about all of your Bengals. Now, moving on from that, we have the world-famous rookie wide receiver report. As always, fellas, sponsored by Underdog. Make sure you check them out. Underdog Fantasy. I don't have a special pick'em to promote or anything, but as always, make sure you check out Underdog Fantasy. They support the entire channel. They are the best. Promo code Ron gets you a deposit matched up to $500. Only right now, it matches your deposit up to $500. That is not going to be out forever. So if you've been thinking about hopping on Underdog, make sure you check it out. I'll make sure I have a link in the description, comment section down below. It'll take you right to Underdog Fantasy. You can hop in these Best Ball Resurrection drafts where they are rest of season best ball tournaments that are just pretty much fantasy football starting week 6 and on. You have pick'ems that you can try every week of projections for fantasy points, targets, passing yards, rushing yards, and you can go higher or lower on those, string them together to sort of multiply your money. You got a bunch of stuff going on there. There's also, I know that basketball and hockey are starting up soon, so if you want to get into fantasy basketball or hockey, in my eyes, I've honestly done a couple of each. An 82-game season, I can't set a lineup every week. So best ball for me, where the best scores are just taken every week, is the only practical way for me to play other sports fantasy football. So if you want to try out basketball or hockey, make sure you check out Underdog Fantasy. I'll have a link in the description and the comment section down below. But let's get to the rookie wide receiver report, the world famous one as seen on TV, of course. But first up, this is going to be all rookie wide receivers with 50 or more routes ran, sorted by a PFF grade. Now, pass snap percentage is just how many of the pass snaps are you on the field for, how many of the routes are you participating in, are you on the field when we're trying to pass the ball? That's really what we're looking for. Targets per route run on a per route basis, how many times, how often are you commanding a target? Anything over 20% is good. Anything over 25% is elite. Yards per route run, anything over 2 is great. Anything over 2.5 is elite. PFF grade, anything over 80 is elite here. So we're just going to sort of go right down the list here. First, you have Puka Nacua. In his first game with Cooper Kupp, they go out there and account for 67.5% of the targets, which is just so crazy. Like right now, one of the more consolidated target shares, or just like last season, was the Eagles, where A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith combined for like 60% of the targets. I think it's going to be like that here, where you see both Kupp and Puka flirting with about 30% of the targets and just having a very consolidated passing offense, where they both finished as top 12 wide receivers this week. I would feel confident in Cooper Kupp as a top 5 wide receiver moving forward. And Puka Nacua like Devontae Smith last year, is going to flirt with top 12 numbers himself. Like I said, I'm kind of comparing it to that A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith situation, but instead of having your quarterback who is Jalen Hurts running the ball all the time, you have Matthew Stafford in one of the pass-heaviest offense in the NFL. So it wouldn't shock me if Kupp was like a top 3 wide receiver rest of season and Puka Nacua flirted with top 12 numbers. To me, it feels a lot like Cooper Kupp and Robert Woods, but Cooper Kupp and Robert Woods was like Cooper Kupp being the Cooper Kupp we know as him today, right? The breakout season in 2021, I believe it was. So now Cooper Kupp is that. I think Puka Nacua is better than Robert Woods. So I don't know. I don't know that Kupp takes a ton away from Puka. I think it takes a little bit of the ceiling away, but to me, again, still just about a top 15 wide receiver moving forward. Now, after that, we have Rashee Rice. It's a little bit concerning to see him go from like about 50% of the pass snaps to now 23% this week, but his per route stuff is still elite. He still had a great game where he actually improved his PFF grade. His PFF grade, Rashee Rice, I believe, was in the high 70s. After this game, he actually got up to 81.6. So that's actually really good to see. He caught a touchdown. We're playing the long game with a lot of these rookie wide receivers. Rashee Rice is a guy that we are still holding the light out or holding the light on for. Same thing with Marvin Mims as well. Snap percentage decreased, but I think he kind of got put in the doghouse a little bit. I was watching the game just because I'm watching the Jets, and Marvin Mims, I think he like muffed a punt. He either muffed or fumbled a punt. There's this one trick play Sean Payton did where he did like this end around, and Marvin Mims just kind of like tossed it up and fumbled there. Like there were some turnovers that were Mims was directly responsible for, so I get him getting less time. I will say that, for fantasy, we don't really care what he's doing on special teams or anything like that. We just care about him earning targets and being efficient, and that's what he's been doing. Still over 80 PFF grade. Again, just like Rashee Rice, the snaps will come. We're holding out for the long game. Tank Dell left the game with a concussion. That's why his pass snap percentage went all the way down there. No real takeaways there. Zay Flowers, target hog, man. Guy has a 22.7% target per out run. He did leave points on the table this week. He had 10 targets with a 16.7 yard ADOT. So that's a lot of volume there in terms of expected points per game. He turned it into just 5 catches for 73 yards. So that's not great, but it's really encouraging to see that ADOT for him, where in week 1 he had a 2.6 yard ADOT. So that's really gadgety, right? We're getting like bubble screens and getting your kind of like Kadarius Toney type of usage there, and that's not great because yes, you're going to have inflated target shares, but your targets are going to be way less valuable than a guy like Ayuk who has like a 16-yard ADOT. But Zay Flowers has shown the last 2 weeks he had a 13.3 yard ADOT in week 4. He had a 16.7 yard ADOT in week 5. So that's really, really great for his upside if we can get him down the field running deep routes. Now, he did have like a pretty boneheaded, I wouldn't even call it a drop, he kind of like tripped over himself, so it's worth noting that he didn't really thrive in this new role, but it's really encouraging that he's been thrusted into it, is what I'm trying to say. So really encouraging as they sort of start to give him more nuance to his game, putting him downfield. That's all really good stuff because we want, complete wide receivers, not gadgets. Now, after that, we have Josh Downs, who had his best game yet as a pro, 6 catches, 97 yards. His 2 best games so far in terms of PPR points have both been in games with Gardner Minshew. So with Andy Richardson now out for 4 to 6 weeks or whatever it may be, Josh Downs gets a nice boost here for these next few weeks. Now I will say Jaden Reed, Demario Douglas, Dontavion Wicks, Quentin Johnston, Trey Palmer, JSN are on bye or they're irrelevant. But I will say Jackson Smith-Njigba, a little bit concerning, man. He's commanding targets, but my God, dude. He has the worst PFF grade on this entire list, and on top of that, the Seahawks are just using him completely wrong. Like, his ADOT is so low. They're using him like he's Kadarius Toney, Jackson Smith-Njigba, when that's not. Like, he's much more of a Keenan Allen, if that makes sense. So I don't really know what they're looking for. Or, I don't know what they saw on film to draft JSN because it's clearly not the same usage in film that we all thought that he could maybe have here. Now, that role could expand. He's coming out of the bye. I'm optimistic for JSN, Quentin Johnston, all those guys out of the bye, but it's just a little bit concerning with how they've been using him so far and very frustrating. Now, we also have some target concerns for Michael Wilson. Michael Wilson here, just a 14.4% target per out run. He had a game this week versus the Bengals where they were just getting beat up on. They were trailing the entire time. They had to throw the ball and air it out. James Conner gets hurt, so they just have to rely on the air game or the passing game. And Michael Wilson was nowhere to be found, just 2 targets here. So it's a little bit tough. Josh Dobbs also came back down to earth in this game. Then we have Jordan Addison. Really nice bounce-back game for him. It's his best graded game of the season. He was versus the Chiefs. He had, I believe, like 60 yards and a touchdown, Addison, which is pretty good. I think like 7 targets, 6 catches. No, 9 targets, 6 catches, 64 yards and a touchdown. That's great. And you have Justin Jefferson, who's like potentially going to miss next week, and that could give Addison a really nice foot in the door to, completely close the door on KJ Osborne becoming that number 2 wide receiver and somebody who's, a focal point of this offense. Now, after that, we have Jalen Hyatt. Tough to get a read. The Giants are just so bad, but 5 targets for 4 catches and 99 yards through 5 games is not good. So we'll see what happens. At least Hyatt is playing more. And then our last guy here is John Mingo. And he's not really doing much, but he is earning targets. 19.1% target per route run is pretty dang good. 86% of the pass snaps this week. After week 3, he left the game with a concussion. Out in week 4, back to being like pretty much a full-time wide receiver. And he had his best week yet. 7 targets, 5 catches, 48 yards, and his best PFF grade of his career so far. So Mingo starting to emerge a little bit. Somebody I'd be stashing in most redraft leagues. After that, we have our 6th takeaway, though, after the rookie wide receiver report. And that one is going to be the Sam Laporta rookie season, man. Sam Laporta, I just want to put it into perspective how good this guy has been. I mean, we have genuinely never seen a start. Like, as much shine as Puka Nacua is taking for his historic start, we've never seen someone do what Sam Laporta is doing. Week 1, 5 catches, 39 yards. I think tying the record for most catches in a tight end's debut. 5 catches, 63 yards in the next game. Then he gets 11 targets, 8 catches, 84 yards, and a touchdown. Then he gets 4 for 56. Then he gets 3 for 47 and 2. And he now has the most PPR points to a tight end's first 5 games over the last 20 years. And it's a really good list to be a part of. Jordan Reed was an absolute monster. Kyle Pitts is somebody that we know is good. He's just in a really tough scheme at this point. Travis Kelce, arguably the best tight end of all time. And then Aaron Hernandez. There were some comments on this tweet of being like, not the best company. I'm trying to think of how to say this. Aaron Hernandez off the field, questionable dude. Aaron Hernandez on the field. I mean, putting up 55.2 PPR points and being on this list next to Gronkowski, right? Like, Dalton Kincaid can't even flirt with this list right now next to Dawson Knox. So Aaron Hernandez pacing with Travis Kelce in his first 5 games next to Gronkowski, arguably the best tight end of all time, in a league that 2 tight end sets isn't all that familiar, even back in the day when they were playing, or having 2 tight end sets where both of them were receivers. Really special stuff. I mean, you can look through anything. Like, until he left the NFL, first 4 years, points per game, he's at the top of all those lists, again, with the context of being next to Robert Gronkowski, right? Like, so just getting routes as a second tight end on team is impressive, and being a focal point of the offense is impressive. And he kind of started the Sam Laporta build of these like undersized 6'3", 240 guys. Who else kind of fit? Evan Ingram, Sam Laporta, like all these guys. David Njoku are kind of spawns. Jordan Reed are kind of spawns of what Aaron Hernandez was. So again, questionable stuff for sure. But Aaron Hernandez was a stud in his prime, man. He really was. Now, after that, we have Adam Thielen, slot hero. This completely fell under my nose. I'm going to be honest. Adam Thielen was a guy that we weren't drafting at all in the offseason. Big miss by me. I thought he was going to be dust. I didn't think that he would be, Dwayne McFarland here's a tweet. He said, Adam Thielen, so this is what he quoted, right, from September 25th. Adam Thielen has 18 and 32 points in his last 2 games at 33 years old. Looks like a borderline wide receiver 2 playing from the slot. Other aging wide receivers have made that transition and performed. Fitzgerald, Wayne, Bolden. Sue me for not putting Adam Thielen in the same conversation as Larry Fitzgerald, Reggie Wayne, and Quan Bolden. Those guys are like Hall of Famers. To me, Adam Thielen, he's not in that same category whatsoever. So, not that he's kind of proving me that he is in that category, but he's having the same late career success as those guys here, where Dwayne McFarland actually makes a really good point here, where Adam Thielen in 4 healthy games this year has had a 67% slot rate, which is really interesting that he's now moved to the slot and had a lot of success, 29% target share, 23.8 points per game, just needs to stay healthy. So to me, Adam Thielen is probably the top 30 wide receiver rest of season at the absolute worst moving forward, just because the offense is pretty bad. But this new slot reinvented role for Thielen is really, really good for fantasy football. Our 8th takeaway here is the Tyjae Spears role expansion here, where Derrick Henry, man, continues to fall in terms of usage, where we now have 59% of the snaps this week, and this was his first week this season with under a 70% rush attempt share. all the way down to 62%. We had Tyjae Spears have his season high, 33% of the rush attempts. It's just tough, man. He's still running 54% of the routes, Tyjae Spears. He's running over 50% of the snaps in 4 out of 5 games. It's just really limiting what you're getting from Derrick Henry. Like, at this point, Derrick Henry is like a dead zone-ish RB2. You know, you got 9.2 points from him. You're not getting much in the receiving game from him. In terms of where he's at, in terms of like PPR fantasy point leaders this year, we're talking about the RB 14. Yeah, I mean, like, it's tough, man. 13.6 points per game. Like, that is just not what you drafted him to be, most likely in the second round of drafts. So, I don't know. It's not like you can trade him or anything, but I think if you have Derrick Henry, like, you have full permission to be panicking a little bit. It's looking tough, man. It's looking really tough. This offense isn't that good. This was a game against the Colts that was like competitive as well. It wasn't like they were trailing the entire time, and it wasn't a game script for Derrick Henry. Like, it was a fine spot for Henry, and it just wasn't great. So he continues to kind of see touches and snaps get taken away by Tyjae Spears, and that's definitely an issue for a guy that you kind of drafted for a crazy volume role. After that, we have Miles Sanders versus Chuba Hubbard. Miles Sanders, to me, was the quintessential dead zone RB this year, and I think that he has shown to do that, where JJ Zach Reason has a tweet here. He said, Miles Sanders has been banged up the last 2 weeks. So that is fair. Miles Sanders has a groin issue he's been dealing with the last 2 weeks. In both of those games, he's failed to hit a 50% running back rush share and a 10% target share. So Chuba Hubbard the last 2 games has really eaten into the snaps, the touches. I think Chuba Hubbard actually led the backfield in snaps and touches in this last game. Yeah, where Miles Sanders had 46% of the snaps, 7 attempts, 1 target. And then you had Chuba Hubbard in this game, 48% of the snaps, 9 attempts, 2 targets. Yeah, so 11 opportunities to Miles Sanders, 8 opportunities. And that's just really bad for Miles Sanders. And on top of that, Miles Sanders has been one of the stone worst running backs in the NFL this year. And if you want to say, oh, well, Miles Sanders has been banged up recently, this week, week 5, was his best yards per carry he's had of the entire year at 4.57. Before that, we're talking 1.46, 2.67, 3.07. Like, he has just been awful. And yards per carry is not a great stat, but you can go down the entire board here where yards per carry, Sanders is 3.1, Hubbard is 4.4. Rushing yards over expectation, minus 0.72, Hubbard is 0.38. You have success rate. Miles Sanders is 34th, Chuba Hubbard is 4th. And success rate is just more of like your consistency as a running back. So on a given play, not so much waiting having a huge chunk play, but you're just taking what's blocked and, just getting the easy stuff. Sanders can't even do that. Explosive rush rate, 35th in the NFL. Hubbard, 16th. PFF rush grade. Miles Sanders is the 57th graded PFF rusher. Hubbard is the 7th. Yards of the contact per attempt. Miles Sanders is 49th. Hubbard is 11th. And it's not even like, I know, and I included this number because I knew there were going to be people that are like, well, Chuba Hubbard's the passing down back. He's getting lighter boxes. Not even really. Miles Sanders has the 45th highest percentage of 8+ in the box runs. So he's running against light boxes. He is only facing 8+ defenders in the box 8.2% of the time, whereas Hubbard is seeing that 31.4% of the time. Like, more than triple the amount that Sanders is seeing heavy boxes. Hubbard is seeing a ton of heavy boxes and outdoing him in all efficiency metrics. The only thing that is keeping any kind of bearing on this primary role or bell cow role for Miles Sanders is the contract he signed. I don't know how long that's really going to matter for the decision makers here. I think there's going to be more of an even split than a lot of the Miles Sanders guys drafted Miles Sanders to be. He's going to get healthier here, but I also think he hasn't been playing well even before the injury. So we'll kind of see how this role shakes out over an entire season. But we mentioned this in like one of the first top 10 lessons learned. Noah Moore parties, Noah Hills. He was talking about it early on in the season. But the volume Miles Sanders was getting is cool, and volume is great for these running backs. But you're not going to lead the league in volume over the entire year if you're one of the worst rushers. Like, it's just not how volume works. So you'll get volume early on, but if your talent doesn't, even up to the amount of volume you're getting, that's going to eventually come back down and balance itself out so that you're getting the amount of touches you probably should be getting based on your talent level. So just something to think about with Miles Sanders. And then our last takeaway here is the Ravens owe Lamar Jackson, or the Ravens wide receivers owe Lamar Jackson an apology. Brad Spielberger here said, Lamar Jackson with an all-time letdown from his receiving core. Ravens were credited with 7 drops, third most since 2017, including 2 in the end zone and 2 more on throws, 20-plus yards downfield, one of them a big-time throw. Lamar's grade this week isn't going to resemble the box score whatsoever. This is why. So the Ravens just had a brutal day. Rashad Bateman had a dropped touchdown. Zay Flowers had a dropped deep ball downfield. Like, it was awful, man. Now, I will say the Ravens, they completely gave that game away for the Steelers. For whatever reason, they're up 2 with 3 minutes left or whatever it was, and they draw up a OBJ goal line fade that gets picked. Steelers score. They mount the comeback. They complete the comeback. You just really hate to see it, but I really wouldn't sour on Lamar at all because of it. His receiving weapons kind of let him down, but we know that Zay Flowers has been good. Mark Andrews is talented. We've seen what Rashad Bateman can be. I do think there are better days ahead, but I just wanted to add some context to that Ravens game yesterday for anybody that's kind of man, I wish I saw more from Lamar Jackson. His receivers gave him no favors. Now, with that being said, that is the entire video. This was a little bit late today. I'm not going to lie. It was a buddy's birthday yesterday. We were watching the game, having a good time. So, late start to the morning is all I'll say. But regardless, I love doing these videos. I appreciate you guys coming out here, watching them, supporting the channel. As always, I'm going to upload this video and then work on the waiver wire video for tomorrow. So as always, be on the lookout for that. Subscribe if you enjoyed. Subscribe if you're new. As always, I'll see you guys in the next one.
Stones, like this froze, ice cold, ice around my body like